President Donald Trump used a lot of inflammatory rhetoric on the campaign trail, but one area that wasn't so bad was his views on foreign policy. Sometimes. At some points in his campaign, he was fairly non-interventionist, and other times he was so neoconservative that he literally advocated for war crimes. Case in point.
I say ISIS is our number one threat. We can't be fighting everybody at the same time. ISIS is our number one threat.
So that's all you'd worry about. Just go and find out where they are, take them out. Don't even worry about a coalition.
I like to do one thing at a time. I would knock the hell out of ISIS.
Okay.
I would hit them, Brian, so hard like they've never been hit before.
What about civilian casualties? What about the fact that we're targeting them and people are very concerned about collateral damage?
I would do my best, absolute best. I mean, one of the problems that we have and one of the reasons we're so ineffective is, they're using them as shields. It's a horrible thing. They're using them as shields. But we're fighting a very politically correct war.
Yeah. Well, we see that happening in
the other thing is with the terrorists, you have to take out their families. When you get these terrorists, you have to take out their families. They care about their lives. Don't kid yourself. But they say they don't care about their lives. You have to take out their families.
You heard it there yourself. He didn't stutter. He didn't mince words. He stated clearly that you have to take out the families of terrorists. Now, since he's been president for more than a year, it doesn't really seem as though he's abandoned that philosophy, because in his first year as president, he not only increased the United States' use of drones by more than 400%, he also expanded the drone war to Niger, he doubled drone strikes in Somalia, tripled them in Yemen, and even though President Obama dramatically ramped up drone strikes when he was first elected in numerous countries, Trump killed more innocent civilians in his first year in office than Obama did during his total presidency, with 4,500 innocent civilian deaths reported. Now, Trump's administration has also lifted Obama-era rules that sought to limit the number of civilian casualties. But in spite of all of that, we haven't gotten a clear indication from Donald Trump that he is targeting civilians. Are they being reckless at a minimum? Absolutely. 4,500 deaths, that's war crimes. But for him to target civilians, that's a different story, and he hasn't really said that he's been doing that since he first stated that we should take out the families of ISIS on the campaign trail. Until now. So according to Morgan Stalter of The Hill, President Trump reportedly asked a CIA official why the agency didn't kill a terrorist target's family during a drone strike. The Washington Post reported Thursday that after watching a recorded video of a drone strike in Syria in which officials waited until the target was outside of his family's home, Trump asked, "Why did you wait?" The agency's head of drone operations explained to an unimpressed Trump there are techniques to limit the number of civilian casualties. Trump called for the CIA to start arming its drones in Syria and reportedly asked for it to be started in 10 days. If you can do it in 10 days, get it done, Trump said in a meeting, according to two former officials. This is the commander-in-chief asking a CIA official why they didn't bomb a house that had innocent civilians in it. So on the campaign trail, when he said that we should take out the families of ISIS, that was just inflammatory rhetoric. But now, this makes him a war criminal. I mean, the recklessness alone is an issue, of course. But the fact that he wants to target civilians, that takes this to a new level, and of course, this violates the Geneva Protocol. Now, we may not be a signatory to Protocol 1, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't abide by it, because the guiding philosophy of Geneva is to make sure that civilian casualties are limited as little as possible. But we're pretending that it doesn't exist, and that if we do war crimes, well then there should be no consequences for our elected officials. And speaking of international laws being violated, let's not forget that Donald Trump literally made the case for torture on national television just days after he was elected.
Mr. President, you told me during one of the debates that you would bring back waterboarding and a hell of a lot worse.
I would do what I would do. I want to keep our country safe. I want to keep our country safe.
What does that mean?
When they're shooting, when they're chopping off the heads of our people and other people, when they're chopping off the heads of people because they happen to be a Christian in the Middle East, when ISIS is doing things that nobody has ever heard of since medieval times, would I feel strongly about waterboarding? As far as I'm concerned, we have to fight fire with fire. Now, With that being said, I'm going with General Mattis. I'm going with my secretary because I think Pompeo is going to be phenomenal. I'm going to go with what they say. But I have spoken as recently as 24 hours ago with people at the highest level of intelligence, and I asked them the question, does it work? Does torture work? And the answer was yes.
That right there, and this story generally speaking, is exactly why progressives were outraged that President Obama didn't prosecute war criminals in the Bush administration. Because future presidents know they can commit war crimes and get away with it. There's going to be absolutely no consequences whatsoever because their successor won't prosecute them. And we now know that it was because Obama also didn't want his hands tied because he committed a lot of war crimes as well. So this is an absolute outrage. The fact that Trump didn't learn Obama's lesson when he initially ramped up drone strikes and had to scale them down pretty quickly once he learned how many civilians were being killed. The fact that Donald Trump didn't do that, but now is just making sure that we don't abide by rules to limit civilian casualties and just outright wants to target houses with innocent civilians in them. This is not good. History is going to judge Donald Trump and the United States very harshly. 4,500 civilians in his first year. Multiply that by 4, potentially 8 if he gets a second term. And it's unfathomable. I don't even have the words to describe it. This is disgusting. Mainstream media needs to talk about this. But of course they won't. So just know what Donald Trump is doing. For those of you who voted for Donald Trump thinking that he would be a non-interventionist, thinking that he would be the first Republican to put an end to neoconservatism or go in a different direction, you were horribly misled. And there were a lot of indications, in spite of his non-interventionist rhetoric that he occasionally espoused, that he would in fact be a warmonger, a neoconservative war criminal, just like Bush. Now, he hasn't done as much damage as Bush has done yet, but just give him time and he will. He has John Bolton as his national security advisor. Mike Pompeo may very well be his Secretary of State. Give him time. He could potentially be as bad as Bush, if not worse. And look at what he's done in just a year. I mean, his first military raid resulted in how many civilian casualties? More than 10? Disgusting.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.